Wonderful. So, hello everyone. My name is Hannah. So I am a student housing advisor for Unipol. I've worked for Unipol. I worked here whilst I studied actually for the entirety of my undergrad course. That was 3 years, and then I had a little break, and then I came back, and now I work here in a permanent position as a student housing advisor. So I do a lot of this, a lot of educating the students about house hunting, about how, advice if they found themselves in a tricky housing situation. But I also work with landlords. So part of Unipol and part of how we work is our main aim is to raise the standard of student housing. So we listen to the students and then feed that back into our landlords so that they can improve their homes for you guys. Hopefully this should work. No, we're just gonna have to go along. So talking points for today. What are we going to get into today? Firstly, I'll go into a bit more about Unipol, who we are, because hopefully you guys have heard of us before, but if not, it will just give you a bit of an overview. And then we're going to get straight into house hunting. House hunting can seem really, really daunting, particularly because it tends to happen quite fast as soon as you get to uni, particularly if you're first year. It's almost like you've just arrived and now all of a sudden you have to make these big decisions for next year, which can be really daunting. Um, so it's just to provide you a bit of advice and a narrative around that, and to help you really. We're going to dive into the different areas in Leeds. So a lot of you are probably new to Leeds and you haven't done that much exploring yet. Oops. Um, so you might not know about the typical student areas in Leeds. Um, so we're just going to go into that and the different rents in those areas, the different types of properties you'll find there, just to give you sort of an overview of the type of housing available for you. And then we're also going to dive into what that thumbs up means. Um, so yeah, feel free to ask questions throughout. Let's move on. I have seen someone's question. That looks like something I'm going to look at the end for you. Um, so who are Unipol? So we are a non-profit student housing charity that has been around since 1975, I think. So we've got over 50 years experience in the student housing industry. Um, our main aim is to raise the standard of student living. We have a very small portfolio of our own properties that are in Leeds. So we have a few houses that we look after. If you're a University of Leeds student, you might have heard of Carlton Hill. That's one of our halls that we run. Um, and then we also have something that we'll get into later called the Code. So this is where we work with landlords all around Leeds. And basically we've set a certain set of standards that those landlords have to meet. So the main thing about us is we are a not-for-profit organisation. So we're not here to make money off you. We're here to try and make your situation better. And I think that's really important. So we've kind of done our poll to see how you guys are feeling. But here's a few ways you could be feeling. Bit apprehensive. So that's about coming to the UK. So that's a more aimed at international students. But also university in general, particularly if you're first year, can be really, really daunting and scary in itself. You're meeting lots of new people. For some of you, a completely new place. You don't know where things are. You don't know your campus. It's a time where you're absorbing a lot of information and trying to get to grips with everything. So it is can be overwhelming. You're also probably dealing with money fully for the first time. So a lot of you would have moved out of your parents' houses. And now you've got your student loan coming in and you're paying rent and that's a financial pressure that you have to sort of stay on top of as well. But we are here to help you. and guide you through all of this, particularly in the housing situation. So, first things first. So, house hunting and securing your housing in general can seem like a really, really big thing, and sometimes, or to some people, quite complicated because it can seem like a really long task. There's quite a few steps to it. So, we're just going to break that down. Um, yes, the presentation is being recorded, so you will be able to find this. Yeah, we're just going to break that down and sort of show you the steps of what it is like to go on your house hunting journey. One thing to bear in mind is contracts. And contract length in particular. Um, so in Leeds, contract lengths are between 43 and 52 weeks. So this means when you sign your contract, you are signing to have a room in that property for that amount of time. You may have heard of periodic contracts, or monthly contracts, or 6-month contracts. They do exist, but in Leeds, particularly when trying to find student housing, a lot of them are like a year-long contract. Um, so that's something to bear in mind if you were looking for something more flexible. This is probably subject to change. There's something called the Renters' Rights Bill coming in, but that's not been put through yet, so I won't get into it. But something to bear in mind, and we do have some information on our website if you want to look into that more. So yeah, short-term contracts for a few months are not really the norm, but you will find them. They're scattered around. You just have to dig for them. So room sharing. We have a few people ask about this, if they can share rooms, if they're in a couple, or if they want to share a room with their friend. It is allowed in some places, but there is also specific rules in the UK around things called HMOs. So their properties have to be licensed by the council to have a set amount of people in, essentially. And if you're signing for a room thinking you and your partner can live in that property, in that room, you technically could be breaking that license and the landlord could get in trouble. And you could also be breaking your contract. Really important one to know, furnishings. So if you do start looking outside of the student market, some properties are not furnished. We have had situations where we had students rock up and say that their property isn't furnished, they don't have a bed, etc. And they had signed for an unfurnished property. So it's just really important to bear that one in mind when you're signing. So we'll get into our website. Some of you may have seen our website before. Some of you probably have never looked at it. What's useful about our website is it's a search engine for a lot of properties in Leeds. So this is what it looks like. This is a very pretty picture of it, actually. Someone's drawn this. But what's really useful about it is you've got all of these filters. So you are able to filter down essentially to exactly what you're looking for and to see what is available in Leeds. One thing that's really good from our website is you can filter how close to campus you would like to be. I think you can set that to miles away or something, or walking distance or something. Another really interesting one is to do with guarantors. So a guarantor is essentially someone who is your backup. If you can't pay your rent, the landlord will go to them. Sometimes it can be tricky for people to have a guarantor in the UK, particularly when they require the guarantor to be a UK homeowner. So that's not uncommon either. And some people's parents might not own a house, so they can't be your guarantor. So you need someone who owns a home in the UK if they're requesting that. But some landlords do not ask for a guarantor. Unipol are included in that. We don't ask for a guarantor at all, which can be really beneficial to some students. The other really interesting thing about our website is you've got this little slider here, and that is your budget. So you can move this up and down to filter out what you're after. So we also have our notice board on our website. Um, I find this really, really useful, so I help moderate this. So basically, any student can post on this notice board in Leeds. And what I find is really useful about this, particularly if you're someone who has said that they're not sure who they want to live with, etc., you can find spare rooms in on a post about spare rooms on this, and you can learn a bit more about the people in the house before you move in. So often you may have looked for individual tenancies, so where you're looking for an individual room within a larger house, and you can book a viewing with the landlord and like the room, but you don't really know who else you're living with, and that can seem a bit scary. Um, Whereas when you find someone on this notice board, you get the chance to meet them a bit more and learn a bit about them, see what they're studying and what they're like a bit more before you commit to moving in. So that one's really useful. You can also, if you needed to, um, offer your room. So if you were trying to find a replacement, so you wanted to move out of a property, you can advertise this on here as well. So you would have heard all about viewings. Um, and viewings, the concept itself can be a bit stressful because you've got to organize a viewing, you've got to organize a day and a time, and hopefully everyone can attend. And doesn't always work out that way. Um, so one thing that we find is really useful for students is to look at virtual viewings. Pretty much every student property in Leeds now will have a virtual viewing online. Some of these are like 3D pictured tours of the house or building, where you can click around, a bit like Google Maps Street View. You can click around the property and see what it's like. And others are like a video recording. Someone's walked around with a camera and recorded it. The other thing that's really, really useful about doing sort of virtual viewings, so say if you've got a viewing that you've booked in and two, three of your group can't attend the viewing at the same time, then you can just FaceTime them or you can record. Please do that when you're viewing properties. Ask the landlord, just say, is it all right if I film this? I won't put it anywhere, but it's just to show the rest of the group. Most would say yes, that's completely fine. So do that if you're going on viewings. One thing to say is going and seeing the property in person, physically attending, is 10 times better than a virtual viewing. I would always suggest that you are going to have a look at the property yourself if you can, or at least one of your group is going to look at that property on behalf of you. Because nothing can really replace going and looking at yourself. You can look around the room, you can look in the corners, you can see things that maybe someone's quickly moved past on a virtual tour or something. Or the other thing as well is that some of the virtual viewings online are outdated. So they might have been taken a year ago. Who knows if the roof has fallen in since then? You wouldn't. So yeah, always try and go on a physical viewing or always get someone of your group to go on a physical viewing. Deposits. A lot of you will probably have heard about deposits so far. Deposits are basically a sum of money that you put down to ensure your interest in the property and that you're going ahead with the property. And also, it's like a safety payment for the landlord that they can deduct from if there's any issues within the property, as in that you've caused. So if you've damaged the property, essentially. Most landlords will collect a deposit, some won't. There are quite a few in Leeds who won't, actually. Unipol, one of them, but also other landlords some are now not asking for deposits and instead are just deducting or charging tenants as there's an issue. Um, but yes, one thing to consider with deposits, and it is a screaming red flag if you notice this, deposits cannot be more than 5 weeks' rent, and that is the law. So they cannot be charging you a high amount than 5 weeks. Um, the other thing is that your landlord must put your deposit in a deposit protection scheme within 30 days of receiving it. For those of you who don't know what a deposit protection scheme is, they are essentially companies that safe hold your deposit so that your landlord can't run off and spend it. Um, these deposit protection schemes can also help dispute things at the end of tenancy. So if your landlord's trying to deduct a huge amount and you don't agree with it, the protection schemes can kind of act as a middleman that in there and sort of moderate that between tenant and landlord. Um, yeah, so that's why they're legally required to do it to help that. So we did touch on guarantors earlier a little bit. Um, yeah, so like I said, they are usually required to be a UK homeowner. So that's one thing to bear in mind before you start your house hunting, that if you don't know anyone who's a UK homeowner who can act as your guarantor, then you may need to look for a property that or a landlord that doesn't require a guarantor from you. That's a good point actually to point out is that there are some companies who provide a service to be your guarantor, but they do require you to pay for them to do that. Oh, I just missed that one, sorry. Sometimes agents will accept a full payment of rent in place of the guarantor. So if you can offer a lump sum of money up front, sometimes the agents will accept that and they'll be like, okay, we don't need a guarantor from you because you have already paid things. So bills, 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 bills. One thing that is really important to consider when you are searching for your property is to know whether the bills is included in the rent price. Um, the last thing you want to do is to have found the most perfect property for you, perfect location, you love everything about it, and it's within budget, just for you to find out that bills aren't included and you're going to have to pay roughly about £30 a week more. So it can be about 100 quid on top of that for your bills, and you can no longer go forward with the property because you can't afford it. You can check whether your bills are included. You can filter that out on our website. So with the filters, you can say, I only want properties that are bills included. It will say on the contracts, the agent or the landlord should be able to tell you what bills are included, if it's all of them or if it's just specific ones. But yeah, it's really, really important to know. And also with bills, it is important if you do go like for an inclusive bills option to know what the details of that inclusive is. So there's certain things where tenancies will be bills inclusive, but it will be up to a certain amount. So an amount of energy used, an amount of water used, and that if you go over that amount, then you will be receiving charges for whatever more you have used. So that's really, really important to bear in mind, because if you are on a strict budget and you've gone over your usage amount, you will then have to pay the money back. And yeah, it's just better for the planet as well to not use loads of energy. Um, but some of the options where they do say all inclusive, that is unlimited. So I would just say really check the contract, check with your landlord what they mean by bills inclusive. Okay, so someone just asked a question. Um, just in 3 installments, and that's a big number actually. How can I find properties where I can pay money? So they've asked a question about when they've done some looking so far. A lot of the properties they are being asked to pay in 3 installments, and they would rather pay monthly, essentially. Yeah. So I would say talk to your landlord about that. If you want to pay monthly, have a chat with them. A lot of landlords will be flexible with you and payment plans. The 3 installments, that tends to happen with um, they tend to be in line with the student loan drops. So that's where that three installment comes from. It's like a termly payment. And that's just the way it's always been for a very long time, actually. Just landlords have automatically started taking those installments because they know when the student loan drops. And it makes sense that way because then the loan drops, they get their money, and then the student knows what is left that for them to use. But have a word with your landlord. Most would be open to monthly payments. Some probably some might not, but I would say a lot of them would be like completely fine if you wanted to pay monthly. So let's move on. So contracts. Now they are those big scary documents. Some are not very long. I don't know what the shortest contract I've seen is, but I have seen some very long ones. I've seen 30-page contracts, and that can be really daunting and confusing to read. A lot of them, the language is in a particular way because of the law, and it has to be that way, and that can make it quite hard to understand. Um, what is great for you is that we have a contract checking service here at Unipol. So that QR code will take you straight to the contract checker. Um, you can also just search on our website for it, and it will come up. And that's really useful for you guys because you can have a third party look at your contract before you sign it and just get the reassurance that you're not signing anything wild. One thing we do say though is please, 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 although it might be hard, do try to read your entire contract and understand it and see what it means because although you can get it checked by us, um, it's far better for you guys to have an understanding of what's actually in your contract and what are the sort of rules that you need to apply within your property. And you won't necessarily get absorb that full information from us saying, yes, the contract's fine. So do try and read it yourself and understand it. Um, but also, yeah, make use of our contract checker. It's completely free. All you need to do is upload the file. There's a few questions from us just to see about if there's anything in particular you don't understand that you want us to elaborate on. Um, and yeah, we try and get back to you as soon as we can with that. Obviously, once house hunting starts, we do see a lot of contracts come in. So, um, yeah, we will get it back to you as soon as possible. So, common scams and pitfalls. So these are the big red flags that we've seen or heard of in the Leeds student housing property sort of scene. Someone just asked, how do you know which landlords to trust? We will get into that in just a few moments. So common scams and pitfalls. So landlords asking you to pay a fee for viewing a property. No landlord should ever be asking you to pay to view a property. Um, If they are, it's a big red flag and refuse and walk away is my advice to that. Um, it's not if someone's trying to make you pay to view a property, why are they doing that? I would sort of suggest like seeing it as like a bit suspicious. If they're proud of the property, they should be able to show you around free of charge because they want to get someone in to secure that rent for them. Um, So they're obviously just trying to capitalize a bit more off of you viewing. Watch out for third-party websites selling you fictional accommodation. This has definitely happened in Leeds quite a lot. It's really good to cross-check your properties. Obviously, if you're going on a physical viewing, then you can see things a lot clearer. But there's sites like Google Maps, the company's home website, Rate Your Landlord. So we'll get into that in a second as well. But other students have sort of reviewed properties online. Um, and you just get, if the tenants are in when you're doing a viewing, speak to the tenants. Ask them, so how have you found living here? How's the landlord? Is there any issues? Um, even if you're with the landlord, if they're a good landlord, they should have nothing to worry about. Um, so yeah. And check your landlord is code accredited on our website. or ask us for advice. So we are always open. You can come to our offices. We're just based on Woodhouse Lane, just by the Uni of Leeds campus. You can come in and ask us. You can come through the door and say, "Oh, I'm thinking of signing with this landlord. What do you think about them?" You're in a position where you're quite lucky that you have us in the sense that we know a lot of the landlords in Leeds. Even if they don't work with us, we know of them, we hear about them because we're an advice service as well. We have people come in whose landlords aren't with us, but we still offer advice. And sort of through the people coming in, we learn or pick up on the names that come up quite often. But yes, you can also check that they are code accredited on our website. And yes, on social media groups, I mean, it does happen. Watch out for people contacting you. So there's a few scams where they're saying, "Oh, we found this lovely property," um, and then they'll send you like virtual tours and things, and try and convince you to go, and then try and convince you to send them money, and then they'll just block you after that, after they've got your money. So it does happen, and they are just a few of them to look out for. So here is where we're getting into how do you know which landlords to trust and what is the Unipol code? So the Unipol code, some of you may have seen this thumbs up around on agents, offices and things. It is basically a set of accreditation and student standards for student housing that we have put out that landlords have to abide by. So it's completely voluntarily done from a landlord. And they actually have to pay to be a part of it. So it is a big thing for landlords. They have invested and agreed to live up to the accreditation that we have set. In this sort of book of rules, you have got things that are sort of making your life easier. We have a timeline of when repairs have to be done by. And if those repairs are not done within that timeline, you can come to us and you can file a complaint with us and say, "My landlord didn't fix this repair within X amount of days." And we can get involved and we can speak to your landlord um, and sort of act as a middleman between the tenant. It's things like proper fire safety. So it's things that are going above law, really. So there are laws out there to protect you against all of these things. But we've just kind of taken it, if the law is here, we're taking it up there a bit, making sure it's better for you really overall. Um, it even includes in our code how much furniture is included in your room. So like what I said earlier about things being unfurnished, or sometimes we've had people go in and they're expecting it to be furnished and there's just a bed. There's not like a wardrobe or drawers or anywhere for you to put things. So we've got popped in there what sort of furniture we believe should be included for students, even like a desk and chairs is included. And then overall, it is to just make sure the property is safer and well maintained. How you know this is legit is that we inspect homes every 3 years or sooner if there's a complaint to make sure landlords stick to the standards. So we inspect when we have a new landlord come on and join the code, we inspect their portfolio. And then this goes on a cycle of over 3 years. We'll start inspecting them again. And that is just to make sure that they are still sticking to our standards, really. So with code landlords, so to the question of how do you know which landlords to trust, you can on our website see a list of code landlords. You can search up your property. If you don't know who the landlord is, you can put the address in and say, "Is this a code landlord?" And it will tell you if it is. We recommend code landlords overall because essentially it's got a bit of a safety net for you. If things are going horrifically wrong, you can come and talk to us and then we can get involved. You've also, through a code landlord, got sort of a very efficient complaints procedure. It's not just a battle between the student tenant and the landlord. You've got us involved and it's more official and can be less stressful for a lot of people. Someone's asked, how can you find out if you can park next to your house? So obviously, if you're going to physical viewing, I would have a look. of what the sort of parking situation is. Sometimes it will be off street parking, so this is just parking on the road. Sometimes you don't need a permit or anything for this. You can just park on the road, and that is completely fine. Other times you'll need a permit, and for these you can just apply for them from the council. So once you've secured that property and know that you're going to be living in there, you can go onto the council's website and say, I'm going to be living here, please may I have a permit? And they will send you one. So how does this all help you? So I have just kind of touched on this. It gives you a robust complaints procedure that actually leads somewhere. So obviously when you complain with us, it doesn't just get buried under paperwork. Um, we do go and talk to the landlord, we speak to you first and see what you want to get from the problem, and then work with that for you. Um, Repairs are done in a reasonable time, and it's peace of mind that your deposit is protected and returned fairly. So that is written into, even though it's law, it's also written into our code. And it's somewhere that you know is well managed and regularly checked. So within our code, obviously, we've got so many rules and regulations in there that the landlord, because we're inspecting, the landlord does have to keep up to things. We will call them out if we're thinking they haven't kept standards well. And the main thing is that, yeah, we've got your back if things don't go as they should, so you can turn to us for help. So now we're going to get into the different student areas of Leeds. So this is a lovely map of, you can see I'm currently sat uh, about here, I would say. Um, yeah, let's move on to the first one. So, where to live in the city centre? So, city centre living is becoming increasingly popular at the moment, actually. It used to be a little bit further away, so Hyde Park, I mean, it's still popular, but that used to be the place to go, where city centre is getting a little more popular with students. So being in the city centre, the benefits of that is you've got all of the shops around you and you're smack bang in the centre of town. So if you want to go out and you're into the nightlife, you're very, very close to everything. Um, I lived in the city centre when I was a student, and I did enjoy it. It meant I could get to things a lot easier, really. So the average rent for city centre is 188, including bills. You will find things are more than that, and you will find certain properties slightly less, but that is the average overall. So one of our properties in the city centre is New York Street. So these are flats above Kirkgate Market in town. And this is really great because we do have students who commute to other universities, so not necessarily Leeds, and you're right by the train station in this case. Um, but yeah, you're also from walking to campus, you're about half an hour, I would say, half an hour to 14 minutes walking. It is uphill. This is an example of one of our code landlords. So sorry, New York Street is a property that Unipol own, and this is an example of one of our code landlords. So this is Scape. You might have heard of it. It's really close to campus, actually. I would say it's maybe a 10-15 minute walk. It's fairly new to the market. It came on a few years ago. And this offers studios, but it also offers, I think, 5 beds, 4 beds, flats that can be shared. And prices start from 199 with bills included as well, and a £400 deposit. And here is another one. So this is on the higher end. This is Exchange Court. Again, I think this one is relatively new as well. So where to live? Woodhouse. So if you haven't heard of Woodhouse, here's University of Leeds. It's essentially this whole area here of Leeds. So Hyde Park is here. and you've just got this little bit to the side. What is great about Woodhouse is it's really close to campus. You can get in 10, 15 minutes. Such escape, can you? Yes, sorry, someone just asked, with properties such as escape, can you choose who you live with? Yes, if you've got a group of people, you can choose to live with them as well. Um, if it's people who are already in the property, you might have to have a word with the landlord just to see if you can get in on that flat, if there's availability in that flat. Um, yeah, Woodhouse. It's really, really close to campus. And what's great is the prices are slightly lower. So because it's not really classed as city centre, it is slightly cheaper to live, and you're still getting that close proximity to campus if you're needing to be close to campus, as a lot of you probably are. It's really close to Hyde Park Corner, so that's for those of you who might not know, it's sort of here where there's coffee bars, there's a pub, there's Hyde Park Book Club. So you're close to a few venues. So in Woodhouse, we have a property called Cliff Road. So this is interesting for people who aren't sure who they want to live with, if they want to live with people. So if they want to look as a group, or if they just want to look as individuals, this is a really, really big property. This is one there you'll find a few of these dotted around Leeds. I think this is like a 17-bed house. Um, but it's all let individually. So it's not let to groups. And what's great about this is that if you do find yourself searching on your own, um, you can get a room in there. They're quite roomy rooms. Um, And it tends to be relatively a quiet house because everyone has searched individually. Most people tend to keep to their own a little bit, but you have got a really lovely big communal kitchen. And this is £128 per person per week. Bills included, no deposit, etc. This is a property at the back of Woodhouse. And this is on Delph Lane. Again, 10 minutes walking in. This is on the upper side of rent and is on 199. Where to live Hyde Park. So a lot of you may have heard about Hyde Park. Some of you might not have. Hyde Park is essentially student central. Most people who live in Hyde Park will be students. There will be families around as well. So there is families dotted in Hyde Park, but a lot of the properties will be filled with students, which is really good because it provides like a really nice community, I think. And also you're really, really close to campus. You're not as close as Woodhouse, but I mean, some places, if you're really close to the edge of the park, you can get to campus in maybe 20 minutes. If you're further on the backside of Hyde Park, then you're 30 minutes, 40 minutes walking in. It has a few shops, supermarkets in the area, and it has also got the really good music venue, Brudenell Social Club. And here's a few examples of what properties look like in Hyde Park. So this is on Cardigan Road. This is one of our properties. It's 128 with bills included. And I think this is like a 6-bed property. Um, this is a code landlord. So this is an external landlord. This one is 140 with bills included and a £250 deposit. And this is Sense Properties. Got a nice little courtyard there. So Burley. Some of you might have heard of Burley. You've probably gone to this Audi. Burley is on the bottom end of Hyde Park. So it's a little bit further away, but I wouldn't let that deter you because this yellow road going through has buses taking you straight to the city centre. And then you do also have buses running, I think it's up this road, but going through Headingley and coming down Hyde Parkway. So curving around, and that one can drop you off right outside campus. So if you're fine with getting the bus into uni, then I wouldn't deter from Burley. You are really, really close to this sort of shopping retail park here. So this is where you've got your Aldi, you've got a cinema, you've got an Asda, there's gyms there. Yeah, you've got a few useful things really, really close by. And it does also have a lovely park called Burley Park. So here's an example of a property that we have on Haddon Road in Burley. And this one's 129. So the prices in Burley can be a little bit lower as well because it is further away. So if you're looking for a um if you have a lower budget, then I would suggest looking in places like Burley. And here's an example of our code landlord. So this is on Stanmore Street in Burley. Um, and that one's 130 per week with bills included. And now we're getting on to Headingley, which is if Hyde Park is here, Burley's sort of here, and then Headingley is behind it. So that's flipped. So yeah, that might have been a bit confusing. Um, but essentially, let me see where we are. If you can see my blue mouse, Hyde Park is this way, and then Burley is over here. So Headingley is probably the furthest away, um, depending on where you are in the different areas. And with that, you do get slightly cheaper rent prices. Um, some places it's only a 35-minute walk into campus. But if you are further into the back of Headingley, it can be longer. But again, if you don't mind getting the bus, which a lot of students do, this road here going through the centre of this little map here, that has bus routes every 10 minutes or something. They're always going past. So you'll always be able to get in. Here's an example of garden house, which we have. This is really, really nice actually. It's sort of in like a little wooded area and it's very quiet. So if you are after a quiet place to live, um, this is a bigger property which has about maybe 10 or 12 flats of 4 to 5 beds with 2 bathrooms each. And that's at 136. This is an example of a code landlord's property. So this is on Grimthorpe Street at Headingley. And this is a form 120. So some people are looking with family. We do have students come to study with dependents. Um, with family, there is some family accommodation available, particularly to students or specifically to students. We have a mailing list that you can sign up for, and we will email out to you any properties we have available that will accept children or other dependents. It is really, really in high demand, and not every student house that will be advertised will be suitable for a family, and the landlord will say it's not suitable for students with families. Um, if you are struggling to find something, we do then recommend for you to look in the private sector because you might have a bit more luck of finding something quickly. Um, but yeah, do feel free to turn to us. We can try and give you some help with that and aid you in your housing search. So someone asked earlier, how can I trust landlords? And then we went into the code. But here is another way of how you can sort of double check your landlords. So you can check your landlord's code on our website, but there's also a few sites called Rate Your Landlord and Student Crowd. These are like TripAdvisor for student properties. So, or like Google reviews, where students have left their feedback and how they found their experience in the property. Um, this is really, really useful because I think getting feedback from someone who has lived in that property is probably the most valuable that you can get. Like you can go look at the property and you can like it, but hearing about someone's experience in the property is way more valuable to me because they've lived there, they've had that experience, they know it's cold, or they know that, oh, there's a bit of mold there in the winter, but it goes by summer, that type of thing. So it's really useful to sort of just background check and see how other people have got on in that property before you sign for it. So I do think that is leading us towards the end of our webinar. Um, if you have any other questions, do pop them in the Q&A now, because I'm going to hang about for a little bit, and I'll try and answer them for you. Um, One thing to point out is that we do have our property checklist. So we have our housing guide online, um, and this includes a viewing checklist. So I really suggest when you go and do your viewings that you take this checklist around with you. It has some sort of niche questions on there as well, not the obvious ones. So, what is the water pressure like in the shower? Because the last thing, if you like a good shower, the last thing you want is to move in and to find that it is just a little dribble. Um, so do have a look at that when you go on your viewings. Um, yeah, double check the details in your landlords. Not in your landlords, sorry, in your contracts. Double check that your landlords are code. Um, And yeah, do know that we're here to help you. So if you are struggling, at the end of this webinar, a survey will pop up. I will also be sending you an email with our housing guidance, some follow-up information to help you. But within that survey, it will help. Firstly, it gives me some feedback, and helps me improve these webinars. But it also helps me understand if you guys are finding these webinars useful, and if you have learned a lot. But at the very bottom, it says if you would like a custom housing search or if you would like help with your housing search. And you can basically pop in like the area you want to live in, how far away from uni, and your budget, etc. That will come to us and or my team, and we will send you back a few links of properties that we think would be suitable for you. And we're also just someone you can ask. Um, my probably biggest advice with house hunting is to not panic and to not rush. A lot of students sign contracts really, really early because they feel like everyone is. And it kind of creates this sort of herd mentality that you need to sign quite immediately. And you actually don't. You're in a very, very good position in Leeds because there is more housing than there is students at the moment. So there will always be somewhere you can live because there's more housing there. Um, if you are unsure, do just sort of take your time, have a think about things, and don't feel pressured to sign anything.